Welcome to yet another great episode of the Let's Be Real Estate show, where we talk to real people in the world of real estate. So today's guest is Nicole Hoover, death doula. So what is a death doula? We're about to find out. Secondly, what does death have to do with real estate? How are those tied in with one another? So let's dive into the conversation. Many of us have heard of a birth doula, but not many of us have heard of a death doula. So you are a death doula. Please do tell, what is a death doula?
So similar to a birth doula, a death doula comes in at end of life and offers emotional, spiritual, and logistical support to the dying and their families.
Got it. What about, so my wife is a birth doula, and so I understand that, and it's interesting, like, these are the most precious bookends to life, birth and death. So many of us think about birth and get prepared for it and are excited about it and celebrate it, and it's like a journey, but at some point we know that that's coming to an end. You know, there's a line in the sand, but on the opposite end, this beautiful experience, right? What's this aversion we have to death?
Unfortunately, 10 out of 10 of us are going to walk this path.
Yeah.
And what would be really great is if we prepare better for it. So a birth doula sits down with an expectant mother and walks through that birth plan, what you want it to look like, what you want it to sound like, sometimes what you want it to smell like, different essential oils. A death doula carries that same plan, but just on the dying side. Who do you want in the room? What sounds do you want to hear? What smells do you want to smell? A birth doula is that cheerleader telling that patient, you've got this, you're doing great. Death doula, maybe not with the same energy, but providing that comfort and that support through that transition process. From the birthing side, from a logistical perspective, it might be, let me get that birthing ball. Let me do this. Let me coordinate that. Same could be said to the flip side, providing that logistical support of having someone leave the room, having someone come into the room, or repositioning someone, or even offering physical comfort, whether it's rubbing feet, rubbing hands. So that's where there's a lot of those similarities.
Yeah, this is fascinating. So what would get someone into this? Like, because we talked about this a little bit before the show, but like, there's so much like talking about death, which none of us really like to do, or at least the majority of us probably don't like to do, dying process, and then the grief that's around this, and some of the turmoil it turns out. Imagine your skin is like an inch thick, right? But how do you do this? And what's your story? What got you into this? What was the time where you were like, this is what I'm doing?
It came through loss. It came through being a caregiver for my paternal aunt as well as my mom. And I was essentially a solo caregiver. No offense to anyone else in my life, but I really felt like a solo caregiver and just managing all of the things. And I was working full time in corporate America as these situations were unfolding. And after my mom had died January of this year, I really felt that my cup wasn't being filled with what I was doing. And I came across an article about a death doula, and everything in there hit my heart in such an amazing, impactful way that I thought, finally, after 40-something years, I'm not saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And this felt right. And I like to think I have thick skin, but I'm also really good at compartmentalizing things. And quite honestly, through this work and this journey, it's really helped me heal my own grief that I've had.
Wow, that's powerful, because you have to be able to be in a right place in order to give that care.
Yes.
As a caregiver. I mean, there's so many different types of caregivers out there. being able to lead from experience, and also with a heart forward. We talked about that a little bit, but heart forward, heart first. I love that. Well, I guess I don't love that, right? Like the fact that, like, yes, you had to go through the grief and the trials to understand like how great you can help. I have heard a little bit like this, almost like a calling. People have to be like, oh, actually, this is what I'm here for. Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you fulfill your personal purpose, like in doing that, right? So you have this passion, right? Most people don't have this passion around death. Well, how do you bridge that gap?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think I'm kind of stumped for a second. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I just know that when I recently had wrapped with a family, and there were some heavy conversations and some very heavy moments, but walking out of that house, I almost felt like the Grinch at Christmas, where his heart starts to expand. Yeah. That's exactly what I felt. It filled just another tiny corner of that grief in my life. Mm.
Yeah. When does a family know to call you? Like at what point are you brought into this situation?
Sometimes, unfortunately, it happens too late, when someone is almost to that active dying phase where they're not awake as much as they should be. But ideally, when someone has a terminal diagnosis, it works out better for all parties involved when we have more time together. Being able to sit and hold space and have those heavy conversations and do some legacy work while they still can. Mm-hmm.
Knowing a little bit about what you do, are you primarily at the bedside, like helping people that are hearing this? Like, are you primarily, they bring you in at the bedside for these final transition, or can you come in earlier? And if so, like, what are you doing for the families?
I ideally would love to come in earlier. And
like a week before,
like
goodness. A month before,
I would
6
say
months?
6 months.
Yeah, okay.
That gives us some time to work together, build a relationship, establish that trust, to where if the family needs some level of respite care, I can come in, sit bedside vigil, go get a cup of coffee, go take a shower. I am here holding that space for you. And plus, it gives us that extra time to have some good conversations, to get some legacy work done. Now, I've done the flip side where it's been within weeks, and just being an extra set of hands, an extra set of ears, and even finding out information that family members were experiencing some conflict and perhaps didn't want to ask the questions that needed to be asked.
Well, we're going to get into that conflict of family. That'll be good. It's interesting is like we are a real estate company, and yet we're having a death doula as one of our guests here. Most people may not understand, how does death connect with real estate? Not that you have to speak to real estate, but like the more that we think about this, it's like we go through life trying to amass these things, trying to achieve these things, to accumulate this piece of material and that piece of material, and including a home, which if you look at estates across America, the value of an estate, 80% of it is real estate. And a lot of people have real estate. We all have a roof overhead of some kind. Some people may not own it, but like for the people that have an estate that has value, 80% of it's real estate. And we all die. And so, these two things come together where people aren't necessarily prepared or thinking through what they need to do. But how do you help families prepare for the inevitable? Like, what are some things someone could do for real estate, for example?
Oh, absolutely. Great question.
And do you help with those types of things?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So when we talk about a birth plan from a birthing doula, at the end stage, you want to make sure that your affairs are in order. And one thing that I'm very passionate about, even though I'm passionate about a lot of things, is when you lose a loved one, the last thing you want to have to do is deal with probate. And so one of the things that I educate people on is if you own a home, you want to see how that's listed from a deed or titling perspective. And so when I was managing the situation with my mom, as soon as she got her diagnosis, one of the first things that I did was we went to a title company and we got her deed listed as transfer on death to me.
Okay.
Super important from a real estate perspective. And again, wanting to avoid probate as much as humanly possible.
So helping with affairs, are there certain things, do you have like as a project manager of this transition, right? Do you have certain things that are like, these are non-emotional things that you're dealing with, right? People may have an estate planning attorney. Why would they need a death doula and an attorney? How do those work together, or are they against each other?
Oh no, I think it's a great complement of making sure that if you have an estate planning attorney, you might not have updated your documents. From personal experience, there's a family member in my life, not naming names, who recently asked me to look over their final documents, and it was from 1999. And so yes, they do have an estate attorney, but they haven't used him in quite some time. And so those are kind of the gentle nudges that I do talk to families about.
Great. So
even my own family.
Right. I'm not sure if my parents have theirs updated since the 70s, maybe. Something we'll talk about during holidays coming up.
Hey,
here.
in-laws, this one's for you.
That's great. In prepping for this conversation, 31% of families have a living will or some kind of directive, advanced directive. 31%, and yet it seems like we have so many estate planning attorneys, probate attorneys out there helping families, and that's significant. That 70% of people don't. But yet, here you are coming in those situations. How do you guide a conversation with someone that does not have these in place, and they're maybe weeks from death? Now what? How do you help in that situation? So
one of the very first things that I do is kind of an intake with the dying person or a family member. And I do go through these items. Let's just put the dead fish on the table. Let's get it out of the way. Let's talk about what are some top of mind urgent things that we need to make sure are covered. And so if someone hasn't gone through and updated that, 100% I'm saying one of the first phone calls we need to have is with an estate attorney.
Yeah.
It's mission critical. I know there's 10,000 other things going on. That's why I'm here. That's why you hired me as a project manager, is let's make sure all of our bases are covered. And so that way you're taken care of, your family's taken care of, and we can start entering the peaceful transition process.
Wow. You think of all the emotional stuff that families are dealing with, and also all of the practical tasks that have to go with it. Many people may not realize that you are a really critical part of this process. How do you get out there? How do you connect with families? What's the way to find these people? How do they find you? Like, what's, what I'm saying? Like, because this seems to be a new thing in the marketplace.
It is. As I started this journey, I remembered back to when my oldest was born, and he's 23, and I was in a Lamaze class, and there was a woman next to me who was not from Ohio. She was from New York, and she was talking about her birthing doula that was going to be in the room. And I thought, what is that? I had never heard of it. And here we are 23 years later, and everybody knows what a birthing doula is. And so my experience and how I get business, I try to be very active on social media. So from a Facebook, Instagram perspective, and some has actually come through referrals. So putting myself out there, referrals, and reaching out to the community, whether it's to a local funeral home or even to a hospice facility.
I know that it's a great point, like just the industry as a whole doesn't know this yet. There are so many passionate senior services out there and people that administer these types of things. And as we go through, some of the statistics are showing that like for the next 27 years, we're going to be in a senior heavy environment. So it's like 2052, there's going to be more seniors than there are people that are not seniors. So it's pretty amazing to think like all the different services that are coming out to support them, to help them. So we're right on the cusp of something that, you know, this service is truly needed for families to help come through. So, all right, we're going to talk about a little bit the family dynamics, right? So you're coming into some hot situations. We know that on our side, we tend to get with some families that like, you know, I was talking with a family yesterday that, you know, the mother passed, the father has now moved into assisted living home, and they need to address the property. And it's a mess. It's a hot mess. And so there's 5 siblings, there's the one administrator, and there's 4 people that have an opinion but are also not helping, right, with this situation. So in these environments, they bring you in, like let's pretend, right, they bring you into this environment. How do you manage that? What, you know, you've been in these situations. How do you manage families in those scenarios?
So number one, it's experience of my own life and my own situations. Second, my background is non-medical. I'm able to provide non-medical support. My background is actually HR. And so you want to talk about navigating difficult conversations, tense situations. I've been there, done that, can write the book on it. And so sometimes I think what makes what I do great is I'm that neutral party. I'm also the party that can be the bad guy. So when you have 5 siblings and you need to get everybody on board, I'm able to kind of navigate, massage, and sometimes have to be the one that is going to say, hey, let's sit down. This is what we're going to do. Let's talk through this. So bring it on. I can be that scapegoat, and I can be the one that needs to help navigate those difficult conversations.
How is grief? Like there's a lot of stuff I'm sure that comes out in these, but you know, working through the grief process with families, how are you able to do that with each individual differently? I would imagine we all respond differently to situations, like including the parent, is, you know, or maybe not the parent, but the individual that's transitioning, that's dying. How do you help with all of these different emotions?
Sure. So as someone has lost a loved one, it can be hard sometimes to have those conversations inside of your own house. Sometimes it can be viewed as, oh gosh, are we going to talk about her again? And so what I like to think of is, let me be that set of ears for you. I always say that the higher power has given me 1 of these and 2 of these, because I need to be doing twice as much of this as I am this. And so I just wrapped with a family, and unfortunately the individual had passed away. And yet I'm still kind of checking in to a few people. Hey, if you need to talk, let's go grab a cup of coffee. I'll listen. Let's talk about your grief, what it feels like. You might not be grieving the same way your dad is. You might not be grieving the same way that your brother is, and you feel that you're in the wrong. Absolutely not. Everybody grieves differently. You just need that extra set of ears to listen.
That's great. That's awesome that you can provide that. I'm trying to think of any other resources that exist out there for that. It seems like so many things are fragmented, like you get a little bit over here, a little bit over there, but nothing that can kind of help tie it together. It's good. Your services, are they paid by insurance? Are they self-pay? How does someone like, and you don't have to talk about like like pricing and stuff like that, but just in general, like, if I'm going to do this, like how do families pay for this? What does that look like?
Right now it is private pay.
Okay.
I do think that as the death doula movement really takes hold, I think eventually it could be something that insurance companies, would cover. But right now it's private pay.
Okay, so it'd be out of pocket essentially for that family. I was just curious mostly on how that works. And then you work with, doing obituaries. So it comes to the end, you'd have an obituary. What's your process on putting one of those together?
I love to write, and I think I've forgotten about that love of writing and just sitting down and letting the feelings flow. So I did
Wait,
work.
hold on. You don't use ChatGPT?
I do not.
Okay.
Now, I will admit, are there things I use ChatGPT for? 100%.
Sure.
But from an obituary perspective, you really have to feel it. You just really have to get an understanding of who the person was. And ChatGPT doesn't know who Tom is. They don't know who Sally is. And over the summer, I sat with a family that lost a loved one. And I went to the house, literally brought my notebook and a pen, and I just sat. Sure, there were a few things that I needed to ask questions about, but for the most part, it was sitting and listening to them talk about Mike. And I got home that night and compartmentalized for a few minutes and sat down and wrote out 2 different versions of an obituary. Sent them both off, and the family ended up using one of the obituaries, did not make any changes. And the son had actually reached out maybe a week later, because I did a check-in just to see how things were going. And he said, so many people came up and said, that captured the essence of Big Mike. And once again, I walked away from something to which my heart felt full.
That's great. Yeah, it's such a personal connection. That's good. So preparation. Again, you know birth is coming. On the tail end, you don't always know when death is coming. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. It could be today for all of us. And we think in our heads too that, as you age out, that parent goes, and then eventually you're going to go, and the kids, you think, just time-wise, but that doesn't happen. Even in my own family, that isn't like the death order, if you will. So how do family, what is the one practical thing a family could do today to kind of prepare for death?
Top of mind, sitting where we are right now, it would be if someone has a home that's their primary asset, going to a title company and getting that listed as transfer on death. That is probably top of mind. It was the first thing that I navigated through when my mom received her diagnosis. But second to that, I would say make sure your advance directives are updated. When I was 30, if I created my advance directives, I might have said, make sure everything possible is done to save my life. Crack my ribs? Okay. Give me a trach for a little bit? Okay. But someday I hope to be 80 years old, and those advance directives will probably not look the same. I don't want my ribs cracked at 80. I don't want to be intubated. And so top of mind, transfer on death, and update those advance directives.
That's good. Because again, we all think we're going to live forever. We procrastinate everything, but how often should someone look at that stuff?
Every year. Every year. Because there's things that you don't think about. I had a situation well before I was a death doula, but your 401k, you have a beneficiary on there. And 99% of the time, it's probably your spouse or a child. Well, I had a situation in which I had an employee that passed away, and the children had called in to check on 401k. I gave them the number for the third-party administrator. A couple days later, kids called back, very angry and upset. Our former employee had an ex-wife that was listed as the beneficiary, never updated it. And these life changes when you don't think about all of the other things that are impacted, can cause a lot of heartache down the road.
That's tough. Yeah, so updating beneficiaries, maybe do it annually.
Absolutely.
We had an attorney tell me, like tax time. It's a good time to just get your documents in order. So every year you're doing taxes, also look at your directives.
Just
and,
like your smoke detectors, right?
Yeah,
Just do a
that's right.
quick checkup on that.
That's right. Yeah, and change the oil in your car, right? And change your air filters in your
And
home.
go see your doctor and get that lovely cholesterol checked.
Yeah.
And
We all have so much to do. It's one more thing.
Exactly,
Right? It's one more
exactly.
thing. Yeah, this is amazing because I think we're focusing a little bit more on like the actual practical stuff, the things to do. But like you are at the bedside in such a crucial time of life, and just thinking about like. Sometimes people hold on, like it's. Can you speak to that? I'm not certified in any of this stuff, but like, you speak to like, is there such a thing where people are holding on to this life, but yet kind of transitioning? What's like this? Maybe that's the emotional or the spiritual side of what you do, but you speak to that a little bit.
Oh my gosh, from personal experience, as I mentioned, I lost my paternal aunt and I lost my mom. My paternal aunt was my right hand, my confidant, my best friend, and throughout our 40 plus years together, we left no conversation unsaid. Nothing, no conflict. It was all out there. And when we knew that dialysis was no longer working, it was after the emotion, of course, set in, there was this turning point of being very matter of fact. And she looked at me and she said, "You tell Father Steve, I don't want ... Okay. And about a week or so later, she did die, and it was very peaceful. Just anything that you can imagine from a peaceful transition happened. To the flip side, with my mom, in recent years became my fourth child. And I'm allowed to say it because I was the caregiver, and anyone in my life would confirm that. And we necessarily did not have the white picket fence upbringing. And when she got sick, I knew what I had to do as far as being the caretaker and taking care of her. And there were probably conversations, Darren, that, actually not probably, there were conversations that we did not have. And one would think with my background in HR and my passion for, not conflict avoiding, that would have gotten taken care of. And the night that it was decided that we were going to move her to the hospice floor, the nurse pulled me out into the hallway and he said, "Nick, tonight's the night. You might want to stay." I said, "Ed, I don't think that's going to happen tonight." And I got up the next morning, checked my phone, no messages from the hospital, went up, sat bedside vigil. This went on for 3 weeks. And there was a lot of lingering and agitation. And unfortunately, within days of moving into hospice, the cognitive, the ability to have that difficult conversation, it was gone. And so I watched her linger for 3 weeks, 17, 18 hours a day. And every night saying, "I love you, I'm okay, I forgive you." Every night of that. And so, yes, I do believe that when there is some level of unresolved conflict, it really delays that process, and it doesn't make it as peaceful as one would want it to be.
Wow. Yeah, you get it. You've seen, like, how does somebody die peacefully?
I look at my aunt, and just watching her body language, through that time, there was no evidence of agitation. And what I mean by agitation, the fidgeting, the wanting to get up and do things, and the I gotta go home, but not in the spiritual sense of I have to go home. I am called to home. And so for her, that's what I viewed as the peaceful transition. She was not a drinker by any means. And there was a night that we brought in a bottle of wine and she took a little sip of it, and it was just a beautiful experience. Again, just until you've seen what it looks like from an agitation perspective, you really are able to see what it looks like from a peaceful transition perspective.
Now you got me pumped, because I want to die with peace and dignity. What are some things we can do to make sure that happens?
First and foremost, clean out those difficult conversations. What is the absolute worst that's going to happen by addressing that elephant in the room? To the flip side, what is the best outcome that's going to happen by having those uncomfortable, difficult conversations?
So open up the closet.
Open up that
clean
closet.
Clean out the cobwebs and have those. So it's emotional. It's not necessarily like, oh, you have to fill out this form and say these 3 things.
Exactly.
So this is an area where we can, this is not a religious or spiritual podcast by any means, and not asking you your where you stand personally, but you can come into these situations with a lot of different religions, religious backgrounds, spiritual understandings, your thoughts about the afterlife. How do you navigate that? It's like you may stand in one area and say, hey, here's what I believe, but then all these other people you might deal with don't believe the same way you do. Mm-hmm. Are you helping people with these kinds of like spiritual experiences?
I will support whatever anyone's spiritual background is. I would just be pleased to know if someone has some level of faith, something that they believe in. So I'm here to support whatever you are feeling. And so if you want to invite me in for prayer, absolutely, absolutely. If you want to talk about what you think the afterlife is going to look like and you just need someone to listen to that and potentially affirm, let's talk about it. Let's listen.
That's great. I think people may have a hesitancy saying like, oh, well, I'm just going to say this. I'm Catholic, so I don't want to, have you change my mind or do something different or whatever, whatever people may think. But so you're not actually, with a certain faith denomination, you're not trying to, sway, but you're helping them transition, because that is a thing. Like we always think about the future, dream about the future, and then all of a sudden in these moments, the future goes away, and now it's like almost my thought on peaceful death is like you can live in the present and be comfortable with where you're at, and there's no more worry about tomorrow. It's like, hey, let me live in today. And even on this side where it's going to happen for both of us at some point. Hopefully not today, but just we're living for something today. You don't want it to be, but I think at that point I would want to be able to say, hey, I'm at peace with this, and you can live in the present. Hey, this has given me a renewed hope to do that, to live more in the present, right, with my kids and like family and all that, as opposed to worry so much about everything else. So it's cool. Slight transition, like to get this, like to be a doula. I understand there's not like, you don't have to have a certain degree or anything, but are there certifications? Are there education? What's it like to even get here? Mm-hmm.
So there's no certification for death doulas yet. Do I think some level of certification is coming? Absolutely, as we see this movement grow. But as I mentioned, I found an article about a death doula, and I decided this was my aha. This is everything I need to be doing. How do I do this? And so I reached out to the person directly, might be a little stalker-ish, but what I found is that she was local to Northeast Ohio, and she had a cohort that was starting up, so an educational cohort, and went through 12 weeks, and here I am.
12-week intensive. You know, I think the compassion, you can't teach that.
And you can't fake it.
Yeah, you can't fake it. And I would imagine like experience, same thing, you can't fake it. You can't pretend to do what you shared, right? And to be there at the bedside and help in good and the bad of it. You can't necessarily teach that, but just like some qualifications, like in that. How about software? Do you guys use any? I mean, I know this isn't a technical experience like this, the transition of life, but like, you know, maybe families. I'm thinking from my standpoint, is there anything like to say, hey, where are we? Are we green lighted, or am I in the red and I need to do all these things to get me into the green? You know what I'm saying? Is there something you use for any kind of documentation or any kind of like saying, hey, I'm on track or not on track?
So ironically, I just met with an organization 2 weeks ago called DocuGuardian.
Okay.
And I like to think of it, so like I think of myself as the hub in a wheel, and there's all these different spokes. I think of DocuGuardian as the hub for all of your end-of-life planning. And what they offer is a secure online vault to where you can upload your advanced directives. You can have free space in there to write about what you want your funeral or celebration of life to look like. You can upload your will, your trust, what have you. And then you can assign a proxy, so a child or a responsible adult, and they can have access to it. And so that way, when a family comes in, oldest son might have that access, and they can just go right down the line to make sure that everything is in order. I'm actually going to be test piloting it with my in-laws, and just making sure that we have everything uploaded and all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so DocuGuardian for those that are watching, and if they use the promo code DeathDoulaNicole, they do get a discounted rate.
How about that?
I know, it's exciting.
That was not a plug, by the way. We're going to have you know, like DocuGuardian, potentially they'd be a good guest on here.
I
at
think
some
so.
point too, so that'd be cool. So, is there anything that we didn't talk about that we should have brought up about the world of the death doula?
One thing that, and I know I've said this about a few things that I say I'm very passionate about, but having walked through the journey of death, something that I think families need to think about and probably aren't in the moment because everything is overwhelming, is legacy work.
Okay.
And legacy work helps us carry on traditions, helps keep that loved one's memory alive, because they say that an individual dies twice. Once in the physical aspect, and second when loved ones stop speaking your name. And even in my own house, I can tell you just recently, my middle child, we were having dinner and he said, are we going to be making Grandma's warm chicken salad and Grandma's broccoli and rice casserole at Thanksgiving? Absolutely. Absolutely we are. And something that I am starting up is some legacy reels. So what that is that I'll come in, sit down with a family member and have a casual interview. Let's just talk. Talk to me about the best time in your life. Talk to me about how you met your significant other. If they have kids, what's been, not only the best, but what were times that Darren really tested your patience? Kind of bringing some lightheartedness to it. And I have a camera, I have lights, maybe not as fancy as this, but then I'll be able to package it up and deliver it to the family to keep that for generations to come. It's so important. You want to keep that loved one's memory alive. You want generations from now to have this, to know where they come from, to know, oh my gosh, Grandpa used to just rock his foot constantly, and look at me, I'm rocking my foot constantly. Now I know where I get that from.
Amazing.
I love it.
I love that too. So what you'll do, you'll come in and you'll kind of capture some of these awesome moments. And then you package it up into like, some kind of deliverable that they can have and distribute.
Whether it's a jump drive or a link to a private YouTube channel, something digital that will hopefully last forever until the next iteration of technology comes out.
It's interesting you mentioned, you die twice, physical, and when people stop speaking your name. I've heard it said like that for our children, we're going to raise them until the day they die. And so the things we say to them, they might, we might not have as much authority in their lives as they grow older, but the influence that we can have in their lives, right? And that legacy reel can influence generations and can give a sense of peace and sense of, I see identity almost, like, hey, here's my family, here's who we are.
Identity, that's a great way to put it.
That's cool. I hope the legacy thing is something amazing that families take advantage of. Maybe we'll have you do some legacy stuff for our family. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think, even you had talked about only 30% of people have their final wishes done. And so the legacy work doesn't always have to come in at the end. And so if there's people out there that, hopefully your parents are still in amazing health and you have both of them and you're trying to plan ahead, this could be a great gift that I'm sure that elderly person in your life would appreciate as well as yourself.
How about post-death? Could you do a legacy video afterwards, you think?
If a family member has already digitized some things, absolutely.
I think that, maybe people don't know about your services until it's too late. And then it's like, oh, but I still want to create some legacy moments. So that's great. So anything else that you're thinking of that we should talk about, that the audience should know?
Oh, gosh. I know death and dying is not a fun topic. And trust me, by doing the work that I'm doing, that doesn't mean that I'm not afraid of my own mortality. But I think the more that we can talk about it and let loved ones in through that process, the best way to make things as peaceful as humanly possible.
That's great. Yeah. So if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to connect with Death Doula Nicole?
I kept it so, flashy in my name. I get a lot of shock and awe, but it makes it easy for people to remember.
Yes.
So definitely social media. I have Instagram and Facebook are both Death Doula Nicole.
Okay.
I have a website, deathdoulanecole.com, and my email is nicole@deathdoulanecole.com.
Okay. And Nicole, just to clarify, Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, because I get all sorts of variations. I think my maternal grandfather used to say Nicole. That's what he would call me. Nicole. So sometimes I'd get cards that had Neeekole, and so yes,
Great.
Nicole.
Great. It's actually been an absolute pleasure. I was thinking,
Darren.
I was initially like, is this a good fit for this audience? And I am confident this is something that we all need to be more comfortable chatting about. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Darren. I
your
appreciate it
time being
today.
here.